Okay, this is the lecture on Vietnam and its encounters with the U.S. And France and Japan, and the subsequent flow of refugees throughout the world. So we are going to discuss Vietnam conditions in Vietnam under French colonialism, Vietnam and World War II, and the entrance of the United States. So Vietnam's early encounter with Western countries, remember, they had a lot of encounter with China and their Southeast Asian neighbors, but with Western countries didn't begin until the 1500s. First with the Portuguese, who landed at Da Nang, and soon after Dominican missionaries, a form of Catholic missionaries. The Portuguese traded Vietnam at Hanoi, and the Catholic Church became popular among the Vietnamese, and the only other Southeast Asian country in which the Catholic Church was able to penetrate is the Philippines. And during the 17th and 18th centuries, Vietnam was divided. The Trinh Lords ruled the north, while the Nguyen Lords ruled the south. And due to a rebellion, the Nguyen Lords were able to conquer Vietnam and unify the two Vietnam, but with the help of the French. And that is known as the Nguyen Dynasty, and it was ruled under Gai Long. And at this point, the capital was in the coastal city of Hue. Incidentally, that's where I was born. And during this period, the Gai Long emperors looked back to the Confucian philosophy and Confucian values to consolidate the shaky, unified country. And the reason why is because Confucianism focuses on social harmony and obedience to the ruler, and being good subjects, being good sons, being good daughters, being good husbands, being good wives, being good people. And it was a attempt to reaffirm good human beings in order um, to stop rebellion and revolts. Now, the Nguyen Emperor during this period did expand and grow Vietnam's territory. They went into Khmer territory, Khmer being the Cambodian neighbors, as well as parts of Laos and parts of Thailand. And during that time, the Khmer Emperor was in a period of decline, and I write this as a fractured Khmer Empire, Cambodian Empire. Now, the French eventually did colonize Vietnam, and during the French colonial period, they took control of Vietnamese agricultural export and controlled Vietnamese governance. They had an emperor, but the emperor had no power. It is what is called a puppet emperor, or what is known as a puppet emperor. But at the same time, there has been anti-colonial movements and resistance to French colonial rule. And one of the most successful anti-colonial movement was the adaptation and invocation of communism plus nationalism, plus a call for a free and sovereign Vietnam. So one thing we need to do now is really to understand what communism is. Communism is a Marxist ideology. Karl Marx is a German philosopher, and it really looks at the world as a kind of tension between two parties, much like the 99% movement here. the proletariat, the working poor, the laborers, you know, and then the bourgeoisie, the capitalists, the owners of the means of production. And and Marxism believes that there would be a revolution in which the proletariat would overthrow the capitalists, and as a result of that revolution, a new society would develop. Now, Ho Chi Minh was in China, and he saw how successful that was in the figure of Mao Zedong, the communist leader, and the Chinese Civil War that occurred in China in 1949. And so he came back to Vietnam and wanted to copy Mao and transform Vietnamese society into an agrarian agricultural society. The peasants, for the bourgeoisie. Um, oh, I'm sorry, for the proletariat, not the bourgeoisie. Okay, and again, it would be a two-stage revolution. It would be a revolution of the proletariat overthrowing the bourgeoisie, and then from there, the implementation of a socialist state. A socialist state is a um, a, a state under dictatorship, and everything's controlled by the state, by the government. And okay, so so things happen in the world for this to become possible, which eventually would lead to the Vietnam War. One of the things that happened really was the outbreak of World War II. And World War II was a global battle between dictatorships uh, and democracy. So at that time, and the French did lose control of its colonial empire because they were fighting Germany and Italy back home, and so they didn't have enough resources for that. And when they relinquished French Indochina, the Japanese came in and occupied Vietnam during that period, and their occupation was just as bad as the French occupation. However, towards the end of World War II, the Japanese did encourage Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia to declare their independence because after World War II, there was a major widespread anti-colonial ideology in the world, and uh, and democracy would be the new form of government. And ironically, though, the French wanted to come in and recolonize their former colony, French Indochina, and the United States wanted to help them do that because the United States did not want Vietnam to turn communist. The end of World War II also ushered in the period that we know as the Cold War. And so, because of this, we went in to help the French recolonize, and that led to resistance of the Vietnamese to the American and the French, and the Vietnamese looking at American as just another colonial power. All right, that's it.